Simply no reason not to go ThinkPad. Check them out on backfromthefuture.ie.
At Harvey Norman, we're here to help. Our online store is open, and today, for 1 day only, you can get a further 10% off furniture, bedding, home appliances, and TVs. So if you need a new sofa to sit comfortably, a new bed for a better night's sleep, a new TV to stay entertained, or you need to replace a home appliance, then don't miss the Harvey Norman 1 day flash sale. Today only, with a further 10% off all furniture, bedding, home appliances, and TVs at harveynorman.ie.
The tall tree in Jim's garden had brought him years of joy. It had been a goalpost, a shading spot, and a hiding place.
A little pruning and it'll come back stronger than ever. It's gone a bit wild. Just a few of these taller branches and we're done.
Always ask yourself the question when cutting back trees or hedges.
Are you sure it's safe?
Stay safe. Stay clear of electricity wires. For emergencies, call 1850 372 999. ESB Networks, serving all electricity customers.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now you're welcome back. So in our recent series, as Virgin Media TV customers, you can enjoy classic weekends of sport, packed with some of the most memorable wins, losses, triumphs and upsets, all on Virgin Media Sport. We have invited several different people on to pick their favourite European football moment. We have had everybody from, well, last night, Stewie Byrne, who was talking about Shelburne against Deportivo. We have had Neil Mellor on, who gave that cushioned header for Gerrard against Olympiacos. We've had those guys on right through to the likes of Ken Doherty, who was in the Nou Camp in '99 as a United fan, and even the economist David McWilliams was remembering Leeds and their semi-final run in 2001. So this evening, delighted to say, we have John Hartson with us. John, evening.
Good evening, chaps.
Great to have you with us. How are you finding things at the moment?
Things are okay. We got three little girls here at home with my wife, and they're doing a little bit of homework. Luckily, my missus is a former teacher, so she's really good with the laying out their little schoolwork and things like that. There's a trampoline in the garden, and listen, we're just like every other family, lads. We're a very humble family, and just trying to, adhere to what the government the rules that they've set out, and we're not really going anywhere. My wife goes shopping maybe once every 7 or 8 days, just up to the local shops to get the necessities. We've not really been anywhere other than that, like everybody else, really.
Well, we wish you well. The point of this slot is a bit of nostalgia. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with it at the moment. So we had two in particular that we picked out as big moments for you. We were talking maybe about getting Paul McGinley on. He's a Celtic fan, and he was talking about a favourite game when it came to Europe being the O'Neill-Strachan eras, your eras as well. The match that stands out for me was probably Liverpool away in 02-03 when John Hartson scored a cracker to wrap up a 2-0 victory at Anfield on the way to the UEFA Cup final. So I'm going to build up to the Nou Camp. We'll get to the Nou Camp in the Champions League, but we start for a moment with Celtic against Liverpool in that UEFA Cup run in the quarter-final. I remember that was a huge thing. These kind of Battle of Britain games in Europe always had a bit of spice. That was a really good Celtic team. I'd say you probably felt a touch underappreciated when it came to south of the border football.
Well, yeah, 100%. I think Scottish football is snared down a little bit down south. I think it's very underappreciated because maybe, they've got all the big star names. I think down south they've got a lot more money in the in the Premier League and even in the Championship, some of the top end teams. But I do think they turn their nose up a lot at Scottish football, and in particular, Celtic's achievement that year. I think not only Liverpool, but we went to Blackburn and we played them off the park. Graham Souness's Blackburn, we won that game 2-0. We won the home game 1-0. So we beat Blackburn twice as well on that run. Graham Souness's quote was, "It was like men against boys" at Celtic Park in Blackburn's favour. So he did us a bit of favour because I know Martin O'Neill stuck that couple of them articles up on the wall at Ewood Park, and we didn't need any team talk that night. So, you talk about Liverpool, which was magnificent. We drew with them 1-1 in the quarter-final, and then we went down to Anfield the following Thursday night. And as you know yourself, lads, going to Anfield midweek in Europe is almost an impossible task. You looked at what they did last season against Barcelona. 3-0 down, had to score 4 goals and not concede. They managed to do it. Over the years, Liverpool, 5 European Cups, and it's almost impossible to win at Anfield under the lights in a midweek game, a European game midweek. So we managed to do that. It was a wonderful evening, great for the fans, great for the football club. And of course, as a lot of Celtic fans would be listening in, we went all the way that year. I unfortunately missed the final through a back injury. I played 12 out of 13 games of that cup run, but unfortunately missed the final in Seville. We went down to Jose Mourinho's Porto. Henrik Larsson's got his 199th and 200th goals for the club that night. He got a brace. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough, and we ended up losing the UEFA Cup final.
Yeah, I remember that game really well, and it was, the first kind of glimpse of what Mourinho was going to do in the game. Where did you watch the final? Were you just sat in the stand somewhere holding your back and disgusted at the whole thing?
Well, I knew I'd missed the final sort of 6 weeks before it actually happened, because I came off in a game at Ibrox. We won the game 2-1. We called it Beach Ball Sunday because we went to Boa Vista on a Thursday night a couple of weeks before, and in a game that we won 1-0, and that took us through to the final. So then on the following Sunday after the Thursday, the fans knew we were in the final, so they turned up with all these balloons and everything else and beach balls, and they kicked them all over Ibrox, and we won the game 2-1. And halfway through the second half, I scored the goal in that game as well, my 25th goal of the season. And I looked over at the bench, and my back went during that game, and I sort of signalled to the manager and the medical staff, "I'm gone, I'm done. My back, I think I burst a disc." And I knew then, with about 4 or 5 games before the cup final in Seville, that I wouldn't play in the final, just because anybody who suffered a burst disc in their back, they'll tell you that you've got no chance to recover within that small period of time. So I knew I'd missed the final, but I wanted to travel. So I watched the game. I went in the dressing rooms before the game with the lads. I walked out of the tunnel about 2 or 3 minutes after the players walked onto the pitch. And then I just took my seat just behind the dugout in the front row of there was a massive crowd. There's a magnificent stadium, is the Seville ground. And I watched it. I watched it in the ground. I was boiling hot. It was a ridiculously warm evening. And I was really disappointed with some of the actions of the Porto players and Jose Mourinho at that particular time. He was encouraging his players to stay down. They would dive in everywhere. Martin O'Neill was going mental on the touchline. So were all his coaching staff and the substitutions. But it was a terrible result for us. But I think it was a trip that the Celtic fans will never ever forget. Ideally, of course, we would have loved to have won. We give everything we had, but it would have been nice to have added a European, winners' trophy, give that to the supporters. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be.
No. I'll just remind people, by the way, before I move on to the Nou Camp, the Liverpool team that night that you beat 2-0 at Anfield, full of names that really would go on to win the Champions League a couple of years later. It's Dudek, it's Carragher and Hyypiä, it's Risa, it's Haman, it's Gerrard, it's Michael Owen, it's Heskey, it's Danny Murphy, Smeeser is there, Barros is there. So it's a serious Liverpool team that you go and beat 2-0. If I fast forward things then to Champions League territory, and this was really Celtic doing great things in the Champions League. Barcelona are in your group. They come to Celtic Park. They win 3-1 in September 2004. Henrik Larsson returns and scores. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that. Was that in 2004?
Yes, 2004, September.
Henrik left? Yeah, he obviously left by then, of course. Yeah, I remember that game very well. Henrik scored the third goal. I think he lobbed the goalkeeper. It was a bad back pass. And he lobbed, I think I'd come off. I started the game, and then Chris Sutton equalised, if I'm not mistaken. And Henrik playing for Barcelona, lobbed the goalkeeper. It was a terrible back pass by one of our defenders. And immediately everybody's looking at Henrik, what type of reaction will we get from him? He was such an icon at Celtic. The goals and everything else that he gave the team. He was an unbelievable player. And he just walked back to the halfway line as if nothing had happened. He didn't celebrate at all. He hardly mustered a smile. Because obviously he still had a lot of affection for Celtic and the crowd at that time.
So that's a seriously good Barcelona team. That home leg was in September. The away leg then is 24th of November of 2004. Barcelona won, Celtic won. This is a Barcelona team with Valdez in goal, Puyol is there, Silvinho was there, Van Bronckhorst, Xavi was there, Deco was there. He was a really great player around that time.
Yeah. He was up to be one of the best players in the world at that time.
Yeah, he really was. He'd gone from Porto at that stage to that Barca team.
And he didn't quite hit the heights I didn't feel. Sorry for butting in here,
go on.
At that particular time, as what he went to at Chelsea, he wasn't the same. He was a shadow of the player when he went to Chelsea after Barcelona.
Yeah.
But at Barcelona, Porto before that, he was an unbelievable talent.
He was, yeah. Iniesta was in the squad as well. And then just to round things off, and this is 2004, so we're talking pretty close to their peak. You had Eto'o and you had Ronaldinho. Ronaldinho around that time, John, it's not talked about maybe because he didn't do it for quite a long enough period, but when he was at his best for those few seasons, Ronaldinho was pretty close to best in the world.
Yeah, he was right up there, of course, an unbelievable talent again, quick, powerful, a goal scorer, could make goals. He was, people used to love watching him play, he could turn really sharply. Just a genius on the ball. But I've got to say, and not many people know this, but Martin O'Neill had year pointed Jos Valhaeren that night to man mark Ronaldinho.
Right.
And Ronaldinho didn't get a kick.
Right.
Valhaeren was unbelievable. Martin said, look, if he goes to the toilet, you have to follow him in the toilets. Get that close to him. And he probably produced one or two little bits, but not enough to affect the game. And that was mainly through the Belgian centre-half that we had, Jos Valhaeren. He did a fantastic job on him that night, I have to say.
There was some kid called Messi on the bench as well. I don't know what happened to him, but he was beginning to hang around. So we were talking yesterday with an Irish player who had played over in Deportivo. That was his favourite moment. And I mentioned to him, Alex Ferguson always talked about loving Spanish football nights, Champions League. There's a smell of, he would say, cigars and perfume in the air. What was the Nou Camp like in 2004? The steps that come up from underground onto the stadium. Give us a sense of what that's like. I know you've played in great stadiums and big games before, but that must be right up there.
Well, again, as a footballer, you're pretty much in the zone. You get used to playing at big stadiums. You get used to playing in front of big crowds. And as a Celtic number 10 centre forward, and as my country's number 9, when you're centre forward for club and country, you tend to not take it in. If I went there now as a fan, I'd be thinking back, wow, I can't believe I played here and this was unbelievable. But at that particular time, you cannot let yourself get dragged into the crowd and the noise and the atmosphere, because you've got a job to do. You're pretty much focused, in the job in hand. But as I said, it's a bowl of a stadium. The one thing I remember vaguely is the supporters being so far away at Barcelona, so high up. They're right in the far corner, like on the third or fourth tier in the away end. And Celtic always travelled, immensely with numbers, thousands. I remember Blackburn away. The away end was, there must have been 7,000 or 8,000 fans in the stadium, and another 7,000 or 8,000 fans outside the stadium had all travelled down to Blackburn for that away, second leg in the UEFA Cup. But it's no doubt for me, it's arguably one of the best stadiums on the planet. The Nou Camp. Everybody talks about the Nou Camp. I wasn't fortunate ever to play against Real Madrid in any competition, so I never got to play at the Bernabeu. But no, as I said, maybe like a lot of things during my career, I never sort of soaked it up enough. And I say to players now, I say, look, appreciate everything. Take everything on board that you're doing, because your career generally comes and goes. Some players have successful careers. They win trophies. They win individual medals. They play with other great players. And other players don't quite get as high as a level to play in these great stadiums. But for me personally, I managed to play with great teams, with great players, and European football. I managed to taste a little bit of European football with Arsenal. In the final of the Cup Winners' Cup, the Parc de France, and I think I played 3 or 4 times at the San Siro. One for Wales. Celtic, I played there for Arsenal in the Super Cup final, second leg, and Barcelona again was a wonderful stadium. But at that particular time, if I'm being, brutally honest, it's another game. It's another game in a magnificent stadium with a great atmosphere. But I never really took it all in.
And do you think, I guess,
with my son, and I'd be like, wow, look at this, John. This is unbelievable. Your dad played here once. So you could reminisce a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And scored. We're talking about a 1-1 draw away to Barcelona. So it was a great night. The interesting question is, do you think if you had allowed yourself take it in a little bit more, I'm not saying daydream during the game, but I'm talking about the warm-up, I'm talking about the bus ride, I'm talking about looking around a little bit. Do you think if you had allowed yourself take things in a bit more, enjoy the enormity of it a little bit more, you wouldn't have played as well, you wouldn't have been able to perform as well? Because I'm not so sure you couldn't do both. Yeah, no, I think you make a fair point. I think you make a good point, but I'm not going to sit here and say, while the ball is coming into me, while I've got to get across Puyol and Marquez and knock the ball down for Chris Sutton, because obviously Henrik wasn't playing that night, and I've got Stan Petrov and Paul Lambert rolling the ball into me. I'm not thinking how beautiful this stadium is. No, that's true.
How good Ronaldinho is, and there's Messi there on the bench. I can't allow myself to think that way.
Sure.
If I'm doing that, I'll be dragged off. I won't be. But I know what you're saying.
I guess it's more like the warm-up, taking a minute to appreciate it in the warm-up, maybe, that kind of a thing.
Listen, I might have done that in the warm-up. I may well have looked around and realised, the fans were sort of packing into the ground, and I don't know, I think it was about 94,000, I think the crowd was that night. I might be wrong, but there was a huge crowd there. And again, if you pinched yourself and said, wow, there's 84,000 people here tonight watching this game, and God knows how many people watching it at home on the television screens and everything else, on Sky or whatever channels it was on. You just allow yourself to take your mind off things. But there's no doubt, for a couple of seconds, you're taking it in the warm-up and stuff. Of course you are.
Okay.
But I wasn't gonna allow myself to get too drifted away with the atmosphere, if I'm being honest.
No, that's very understandable. To sum it up then, so we've touched on that UEFA Cup run, and there's Celtic fans texting in, remembering it very fondly and thinking, God, wouldn't it be lovely to have something like that now? If you take that UEFA Cup run and the results, like at Anfield, like away at Barcelona, aside from very decent players, which is clear and necessary, that Celtic team had a bit of something about them, and O'Neill at that stage, Martin O'Neill, seemed to be really a man, and Strachan as well, to a point. They could get big performances out of that team.
We had good players. I think the game is about good players. Yes, manager puts in a bit of structure, and the manager, your feelings for the manager makes you try that little bit harder. The way the manager is to you as an individual, as a human being, tactically, the way that he can make changes during the game to change a game, but also, you need good players. Yeah. You look at United, you look at the defenders they've had over the years, the midfield players, the strikers, the goalkeepers. They're good players, and we had good players. We had Stiljan Petrov, who had 100 caps for Bulgaria. One of the greatest Bulgarians, was fantastic on the ball, great balance, could play, could score a goal. We had a European Cup winner in the lineup in Paul Lambert. We had a Golden Boot winner in Chris Sutton. gone to Chelsea for 10 million, won the Premier League. You know, defensively we were very strong. We had pace with the gap down the right, and we had a bit of guile with Alan Thompson down the left, who had a wand as a left foot. You know, we had really good Henrik Larsson and myself, you know, and who scored goals at Arsenal and West Ham and played for my country, you know. So we had good players, and Martin sort of assembled a good team. And I've got to be honest, that the team didn't change much. You know, the team, if you won, and in particular a striker, if you scored or made a goal, then we didn't change. And I think if I had any gripe with any, not so much a gripe, but I wonder sometimes why managers have to have such a huge squad. Because footballers want to play. They don't want to rest. I could have played Saturday, Wednesday, and I've got a big game Saturday. I don't want to come out of the team. Unless, of course, I'm injured. You do very little training during these periods. All you do is a 5-sides, massages. You check over upstairs. There was a private gym there if you wanted to go and do some weights or just, you know, do some extra sort of things, you know, some sit-ups and just tune, you know, self-tune, if you like, your body and things like this. So
you're in a rhythm.
Yeah, go in the ice bath. So people tend to want 2 players now, don't they? Teams, the top teams, tend to want 2 players for every position. We couldn't have that luxury, you know. And one thing I'm trying to say is that players want to play. Believe me, if you're a player and you're a top player, you don't want to rest. You really don't want to rest. If you're a centre forward, you want to get your goals up. You want to get your numbers up. If you're a midfielder, you've got no interest in resting. Defenders love clean sheets. They love heading the ball. Defenders, you know, they love defending properly, you know, and getting the better of their opposite centre forwards. But, you know, as I said, going back to that team and the team that Martin assembled, you know, we had some winners in there as well, some men, some real men. I think our youngest player was Stilian Petrov, around about 25, 26 years of age. Okay. You know, I was 30, Lenny was 30, Sutton 30, Lambert, Valharan, you know, Johan Mjällby, another Swedish international, a brilliant player, could play centre-half or midfield. Thompson, again, all 30 plus. So you had a team of men. You had a team of men going out there as well.
Yeah. Well, listen, 1-1 away to Barcelona. That's definitely a very nice entry in the series. John, thanks a million. Stay safe.
All right, boys, anytime. All the best.
See you now. John Hartson there. And that was the latest Champions League memory. We should be talking about Champions League game. Obviously, that's kind of the hook for this. And it'll be back on Virgin Media Sport, I'm sure, very soon. In the meantime, they are airing over 10 hours of classic games each weekend to celebrate some of those amazing moments in sport. We'll take a short ad break. Wednesday night rugby is on the way after 8.
Off the ball on News Talk. On Formal Friday, we asked you to join us in supporting those in the front line by dressing up to the nines. And join us you did. Together, we raised over €160,000 to help our frontline heroes. And it's not too late if you still want to take part. Just go to newstalk.com/donate and give what you can. And from all of us at News Talk, thank you.
Need next day delivery on industrial tools and safety supplies? Then you need Caulfield Industrial, one of Ireland's largest suppliers. Our nationwide distribution service offers next day delivery on over 50,000 stock items from caulfieldindustrial.com. We supply quality tools, safety gear and equipment from all the top brands.